Alright all, and welcome back to a new video and the Day 3 preview of the Cheltenham Festival 2021, where we'll be looking at 4 of the main races on Thursday's card, looking at the Marsh Novices Chase, the Ryanair Chase, the Stairs Hurdle and the Mares Novice Hurdle. It's getting very exciting at this stage. We're around 3 weeks away from the festival right now, and I know it's getting to that stage. You're getting the handicap entries out, you're getting the weight soon enough as well, and hopefully we'll be able to decipher those handicaps in a week or two's time after I've concluded all 4 of these videos. The first 2 have gone down very well. Thank you to all that have been getting involved, to commenting down below or liking and subscribing. I know there's a few new subscribers around, so if you are new, I hope you have enjoyed the previous videos, and I hope you might enjoy this video as well. If I haven't responded to your comment of either of the other videos yet, do just hold fire. I will get round to them all. I am trying to get through all of them, and hopefully I'll get back to you sooner rather than later. As I've said before, I did an awful lot of plugs on the previous video in terms of preview nights that I'll be on. I've added a couple more. There's going to be a few more I'll be on between now and Cheltenham. I'm a bit of a gun for hire, I must say, in the month of February and March. I want to get involved in as many things as I possibly can. There's not much else you can do in Ireland at the moment. I'm in university, so you know, college work only gets you so far, and at the moment Cheltenham is taking up an awful lot of my time, and that's how I wanted to stay, so I'm going to get myself involved. I'm being asked to be on the SM Media Cheltenham preview night. SM Media do their Cheltenham videos themselves. Scott McPike has created a channel. He does an awful lot of football coverage, golf coverage as well. It's a sporting channel. I'd highly recommend it. And the same goes for Tackling Sport. 2 of my friends, actually, Dan Hussey and Sean Hussey, who have done certain things with me before. Dan was actually on one of my podcasts back in kind of April time, I believe it was, when lockdown originally started. He was on one of those ones. They've created a sporting channel themselves, and they're doing a Cheltenham preview night the Tuesday before Cheltenham, I believe. So those are 2 more to add to the growing list. Hopefully a few of you guys will be able to tune into a few of them. Obviously the finishing line one on Friday night is the one that's closest to us, and they've managed to procure Gavin Lynch to come on as well, which is a massive get. I must say it's a great achievement from the lads over at the finishing line to get Gavin, and I'm really excited to do it. I was excited anyway, but it should be some great fun. 6 or 7 of us going almost head to head with our views on the Cheltenham Festival. So hopefully it's a live streamed event, so hopefully some of you guys will be able to tune into that. I know a fair few of you that will watch my videos will also watch theirs, so hopefully there will be enough overlapping for you guys to be getting involved. As I said, the previous videos have gone down well, but we're moving on into Thursday's action. And I think, bar the Marsh Novices Chase, Thursday looks a very intriguing day for kind of competitive racing, not necessarily with, you know, massively kind of appetising favourites or anything like that, but you've got the grade ones, the Ryanair and the Stairs Hurdle are very competitive races. You could make a case for an awful lot of them. The Mares Novice Hurdle is also very competitive. And then you've got the Pertemps, the Paddy Power Plate and the Kim Muir, which are 3 of the trickier handicaps as well. We'll only be going through the graded races on today's video, starting off with the Marsh Novices Chase. And I know I've been elongating these videos a lot to kind of go through these races in depth, and I know a fair few of you seem to be enjoying that, so hopefully that is the case. I think this one could take very little time though. Envoy Len is your favourite at 5 to 6 best price, 4 to 5 with a lot of bookies, and as much as I'm not going to put them up at this time, because we're still 3 weeks out, and to be honest, like me putting up odds on horses, you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't know already. You know, it's the type of horse, you know, obviously you'd probably back on the day if he was still 4 to 5, but I think of all these odds-on shots are very short price favourites. You could argue Envoy Len's still a price at 4 to 5, I believe. I think this race is poor. Envoy Len just has the as the mockers over some people. A lot of the Irish trained horses just don't want to know. They don't want to go close to them, and they'll more than happily take on Shishkin and Energamine or take on Monkfish, which are all very good horses in their respective races. They just seriously don't want to go near Envoilin. Also, you have the likes of Easy Work, who unfortunately died, and the Big Getaway, who's picked up a bad injury, that were second and third in the Ballymore last year. And Asterion Forlange, he probably hasn't reached the heights over fences that you'd hoped he might have. All of them could have been runners in this type of race, but for one reason or another, none of them will turn up. Andy Dufresne is another one. He's looking to stay in Ireland. He's been taken out of these races and will run in the Powers Gold Cup at Fairyhouse instead. He's another type of horse that would have maybe ran okay. Envoilin, what is there to say about him? He was a brilliant horse as a bumper horse. He shouldn't have been as good as he was as a bumper horse, given the size of him, given the way he runs. He shouldn't have won a champion bumper. He still managed to do so. The form of that race was pretty good. I know Blue Sari has let it down long term, but Thyme Hill was back in third, Abacadabra's fourth. And then he went last year to the Ballymore and was given an awful lot to do by Davy Russell, and there's no getting away from that. And I think it would be remiss of me not to say that turning in just for a few strides, I thought they'd gotten away from him and he wasn't going to pick them up. But I should have trusted Davy and the horse a bit more than I did. And he picked them up in super fashion and put the race to bed. It looked a pretty strong race on the day, and I think the form of it has turned out to be strong when you look back at it. Even the likes of Sham Blue and Sporting John, who I'll get onto in this race, who were well beaten in that race, have gone on to be decent enough novice chasers this year. In terms of his chasing, this year he's ran 3 times. He hasn't had to beat much. There's no getting away from that. He won a flimsy enough down Royal Beginners, although the 2nd January Jets has won a Beginners Chase since, so there's at least a hint of robustness to that form. He then won the Drinmore Novices Chase. Obviously, Cocoa Beach was 4th to 4 that day. He's gone on to win the Thyestes and the 10-up Novice Chase as well. So there's bits and bobs of form. Like, it's not like he's beaten absolute mugs. There are some people that will tell you he hasn't beaten a twig, which is incorrect. That being said, he hasn't beaten... he hasn't faced the likes of a Monkfish or an Energamine or anything like that, but he's not going to have to face them in this race. As I say, it looks a weak contest, and there aren't any horses in here that you genuinely believe he can't beat. It looks soft, and I do think he takes a whole heap of beating. And to be honest, he's the type of horse that could still go off 1-2 or 1-3 on the day, especially if the race was to cut up. So that's why I'm suggesting that 4-5 probably mightn't be the worst price for these shorter horses, because I do think no festival favourite is bomb-proof. Only 1 out of 6 odds-on shots won at the festival last year, but the one was Envoilin, and he is a very, very good horse. I want him to win. I know an awful lot of people want him to win, and hopefully he gets the job done. But at the moment, he wouldn't be a selection, and I won't have a selection in the race, actually, because there's no point really taking him on, I don't think, considering you're just playing for second and third money. Looking at the challengers, though, I should go through them. Sham Blue is, he's the second in the market that's actually going to run. And Energamine and Monkfish are ahead of him in the market, but neither of them are going to run. Sham Blue has been good this year. He's transformed for going over fences. He won 2 races at Wetherby very impressively before winning the Quarto Start from the big breakaway. I thought it was a hard one because he jumped so well that day. Like, he is such a lovely jumper that you go, oh, that was a brilliant performance. But the fact he only beat the big breakaway the way he did, considering I would say he made 10 to 15 lengths in the air on the big breakaway all the way around, and he still was kind of all out to beat him 2 or 3 lengths. So therefore I was willingly kind of, I didn't end up having a bet in the race, but I wasn't keen on him in the Scilly Isles. I remember my dad actually kind of turned to me, because we backed him over Christmas in the Quarto Star, and I'm the type of guy that usually likes to go in again, especially if a horse has done it impressively. And he turned to me on the day of it. It was obviously the first day of the Dublin Racing Festival, and said, "Are we not gonna, are we not gonna back Sham Blue?" And I was just humming and hawing. I didn't think it was as impressive as people made out. And the Scilly Isles going to prove that point again. He jumped super. He probably made 7 or 8 lengths on Sporting John in the air, and still got picked up at the back of the last. That just can't be good enough form here to really trouble Envoilin. He probably sets the race up, considering he'll go from the front. He will jump pretty well. He might stick on and come second or third, but I just can't see it, to be honest. I think Envoilin will be able to just travel on his quarters and quicken by him whenever he needs to. Next in the betting is Sporting John, who won that Silly Oz Novices Chase on only his second start over fences. So that's a very good performance from him, considering he bombed out at Exeter on his chasing debut. He was a good novice hurdler last year before disappointing in the Ballymore when I think a 7-2 second favourite to NYLN. He didn't raise a gallop at all that day, but Philip Hobbs' horses probably didn't run too great throughout the entirety of that week, maybe bar Pylon in the Martin Pipe. So it was just one of those you were willing to let that go because of stable form. Then, as I say, he was very disappointing when being beaten by Fiddler on the Roof and Silver Hallmark at Exeter. Now, that form has ended up being decent enough. Fiddler on the Roof is been grand. He's been knocking on the door in all these grade 2s without winning, and Silver Hallmark has won a grade 2 at Haydock, beating Maroon. So there is a bit of something to that form, but he was beaten 30 lengths. It was much improved in the Scilly Isles. That being said, his jumping early on in the race would cause an awful lot for concern, and I just think if he jumps like that at Cheltenham in the early stages of the race, he'll be out of the race before you know it. He'll have made mistakes that will either render him on the deck or render him being 20-30 lengths behind, and I don't think you'll be able to recover that type of ground. If I was to potentially have one without NYLN, I would probably be siding with Chantry House for Nicky Henderson, who's not the type of horse I've ever really been in love with, but I just think in this race he's probably a little bit overpriced if you were desperate for an each-way play in the race at 16-1. He's 2 from 3 over fences. He won on his chase debut at Ascot when Pictory fell. I don't know, I thought Pictory might have picked him up that day, if I'm being honest. I don't know, I didn't think he was travelling massively well. He didn't jump massively well in the early stages of the race, jumped well near the end when it mattered, though, and did win very impressively in the end, only beating one other rival. He then went to Cheltenham at the November meeting in that 2.5 mile Novices Chase and jumped deplorably and got well beaten by Fussell Raffles and Lieutenant Rocco. Now, there was a monumental drift on him on the day, and there was money for Fussell Raffles and boat trained by Nicky Henderson. You wouldn't know kind of what was going on that day, but he jumped poorly and didn't travel and was well beaten in the end. He was then given a fair bit of time off before resuming his chase career at Wetherby only a couple of weeks ago. He beat Coconut Splash there. I thought that was a really nice performance. I thought he jumped an awful lot better. And I think a bit of better grain might suit this horse. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was able to run well and into a place. But I don't think he's a real viable threat to the favourite NYLN. I did mention Fussell Raffles in that. He'll probably run in this race. He always looks slightly up against it at grade 1 level. There's very little Irish challenge, as I alluded to. I think an awful lot of Irish trainers just don't want to know with NYLN. They have no interest in going close to him. Franco de Port, I mentioned in the day 1 preview, he may step up in trip. If he was, you'd have to give him maybe a chance of hitting the frame. He's got some pretty good form over 2 miles this year, and Chatham Street Lad is the only other Irish trained runner who's 20-1 or less, and I think he has an awful lot to find based on all known form for Mick Winter. So NYLN looks the most likely winner. Will I be backing him right now? No, I will not. Will I be backing anything against him? No, I will not. It's just one of those to leave a little bit like the Champion Chase, a no selection race, but it wouldn't surprise me if NYLN was to win and win pretty easily, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Chantry House was maybe to pick up a bit of place money. Moving on to the Ryanair Chase, which is an awful lot more of a competitive betting heat. 5-1 the field will tell you all you need to know about this grade 1. Very open indeed. Starting off with the favourite Allaho, who long-term viewers of this channel will know that I put him up in September for this race at 12-1. I think that's a very fair price, obviously, now that he's 5-1. I think 5-1 isn't the worst price around, actually. It's still a working man's price at 5-1, even though he is favourite. I think he's got a fair bit going for him, Allaho. He is a little bit of a cliff horse for me, I will admit that. But last year, I don't know what they were doing with him last year. It just struck me all year like he should have been running in the Marsh. He got beaten on his beginner's chase debut at Leopardstown by Easy Game, when he was maybe a tad soft in the finish over 2-5, and then won a beginner's beating Milan native by 21 lengths at Fairyhouse, and then went straight to the festival. It was a big ask for him to run in the RSA, I was going to say the Ryanair. the RSA after just 2 starts over fences, and he wasn't exactly a massively campaigned hurdle horse as well. He went to the Bartlett having only ran once over hurdles, and only I think has 3 career starts over hurdles. So he was still a very inexperienced horse going to the RSA last year. I thought he run a stormer from the front. I think based off how he ran, I think he would have won the Marsh actually over 2.5 miles. I do think the key to this horse is 2.5 miles and letting him bowl along in front and jump well and travel well. He's got a fair bit of cruising speed about him, and I think he'll be able to lie up with early pace in this. This year has been a bit up and down. He obviously ran a no race in the John Durkin in the fog. We have no idea what really happened there. Apparently he made a few bad mistakes and was all but pulled up by David Mullins that day. He then improved a little bit. Well, he improved a fair bit on that when coming fourth in the Savills Chase, but I think the camp were still a little bit disappointed by that. He travelled into the race quite nicely, but didn't really kick when you needed him to, kind of the 3 out stages around a half mile from home at Leopardstown, and Mellon and Kenboy got away from him, and the likes of an Aplu Tar kind of sailed by him with 3 furlongs to go, and he plugged on for fourth. They finally seen the light, I think, with this horse, and they dropped him back to the Thurles race, which was formerly the Kinloch Bray. It's now, I think, the Horse and Jockey Club Chase or something like that. It was the Kinloch Bray, though. Sizing John won it a couple of years ago, and he won very impressively, I thought, to Ellie May. Beat her by 3 lengths, 82 lengths back to Animix, who isn't the worst yardstick at that, especially at kind of grade 2, grade 3 level. I thought that was a really good performance. I know there was a few, like Battle Over Doyen was a bit of a no-show in that race, but Ellie May ran up to her merits, and she's franked the form since back in Mare's company, and obviously she's a mare I like an awful lot for the Mare's Chase, so I'm obviously going to hopefully think that form is good. I thought he picked up quite impressively at the back of the last, considering I thought he got a little bit lonely on the way to the last, and I wasn't sure whether that was just him being lonely or whether he was running out of any petrol. But the way he picked up again after jumping the last would indicate it was just loneliness, I think. And I think if a horse can kind of eyeball him, he might keep finding in the Ryanair. I think he's got a massively good chance in this. As I say, I am sitting on a better price slip on him, I do understand that, but I think 5 to 1 isn't the worst price available about him as well. Min is the second favourite in here at 7 to 1 best price, last year's winner, and I know I did a video with Josh on Let's Talk Racing previewing the Ryanair, and I was maybe a little bit overly snippy about Min with the way he ran the last day. The way he ran the last day was a little bit concerning. There's no getting away from that. He didn't jump very well. Considering he's usually such a good jumper, it was a little bit of a concern. He was pulled up down the back. It's not an ideal prep for this race. Again, there's no getting away from those facts. But that being said, he still is a very good horse. He does look these days like he is just an out-and-out 2.5 miler. I'd just be a little bit concerned with Min that he was very, very much tying up at the finish last year. And I backed him last year. I love Min as a horse. I've tried with Min to get Altior beat with him more times than I can count. And I was absolutely delighted. It was one of my favourite moments of last year's festival, him being able to win a festival race. No horse more deserving than him. But he is a year older, and I'm just not so sure it's as straightforward as it is. I think the race has got plenty of strength in depth. Maybe not of, high class horses, but last year was a bit of a windy renewal. Aplu Tar, I don't really like Aplu Tar. I know we'll probably get onto that with the Gold Cup preview in a couple of days' time, but I just don't like him as a horse. Never have. I think he's a little bit overrated, in my personal opinion. St. Calvados was second, gaining at the line, and he fluffed the last. Frodon was in there. He ran his race, came fourth. Riders on the Storm fell. He hasn't shown a penny since then. So it's hard to know. I just think that there is a fair bit in this race this year, and it's going to be interesting to see how these Mullins horses are ridden, because he's got 3 chances in the race, all of whom I suspect would be benefiting from an aggressive ride over 2.5 miles. It will be interesting to see how the jockey bookings also pan out, especially if amateur riders aren't going to ride, because I'd have thought that Allaho would be ridden by Paul Townend and Patrick Mullins would ride Min. But if Patrick Mullins can't ride, I think that provides a few dilemmas. And potentially we might see the likes of Danny Mullins, Rachel Blackmore and Brian Cooper getting absolutely key spares in these types of races. Wouldn't surprise me at all. But obviously Patrick Mullins has ridden both Min and Mellon in years gone by. Paul Townend, I think he might stick with Allaho personally. He's almost fallen off the cliff with me. We're almost hand in hand with Allaho, me and Paul Townend. So it'd be interesting to see how that works out. Min, I'd love him to run well. I just think he might be a little bit up against it this year, especially off the back of that run at the Dublin Racing Festival. Move on to Imperial Aurora, who's next in the market. The shortest of the English runners. Again, another horse coming here off an unideal prep. Same with St. Calvados, who's next in the market, and I'll discuss the two of them side by side. I wouldn't be backing either of them, but I could see the case for both of them. I'm a big fan of Imperial Aurora. I absolutely adored the Imperial Aurora, simply the Bet's form from last year, and both of them won handicaps at Cheltenham, and both won them impressively. Imperial Aurora, I'm just a little bit concerned whether he's won two soft races this year. He beat Windsor Avenue up at Carlisle. Windsor Avenue, as long-time viewers will know, is one of my biggest cliff horses, and he just hasn't done it this year, and he's been well beaten the last couple of times in handicaps. So beating him 2.5 lengths doesn't look the greatest form now. Probably looked better at the time. And you had a few horses that can't jump in behind that day, the likes of Black Op and Brewing Up a Storm, who, Black Op can't jump, and Brewing Up a Storm can't jump for peanuts. He's back over hurdles now. So I wouldn't be so sure about that. And then he went on to win the Amlin Chase at Ascot, beating Itchy Feet and Real Steel. Real Steel hasn't seemed to raise a gallop for Paul Nicholls this year, and Itchy Feet's now back over hurdles himself for Ollie Murphy, having had big jumping issues. He was beaten by Dashel Drasher next time out as well. So I'm not so sure whether they're the two most robust graded races of the year. And then he went and unseated at Kempton. It can't be the greatest sign. I do like the horse. I do like Kim Bailey, and I love David Bass. But I think he is up against, and he's maybe a point or two short for my liking. St. Calvados is a couple of points bigger than him. He's had a bit of a, one good run, one obviously unfortunate incident at Sandown in the rearranged Cotswolds Chase. He unseated, so he's coming into this race on the back of an unseat as well. Prior to that, though, he was fourth in the King George, and I thought he ran a stormer in the King George. He was travelling as good as anything turning in, and I think he just plainly didn't stay. I think the drop back to 2.5 is exactly what this horse needs. Harry Whittington has had a disappointing year of things. There's no getting away from that, but his horses are finally turning the screw, I believe. He had a winner at Weatherby today by 11 lengths. He had a winner a couple of days ago as well at Lingfield. So it looks like they're finally turning the corner. Maybe if they are so, he might have an each-way chance, St. Calvados. Not a horse that's ever particularly done it for me, but I can see the angle behind him and wouldn't be putting you off as a result. Fakir Duderies and Mellon probably bring similar enough form to the table, and you can also add Samcro into this list of three that have seen each other many times. Starting off with Fakir Duderies, he's the shortest of these, and I know a few people do like him in this race. And again, another one, I can see the angle behind Fakir Duderies. I really can. I think he does have a chance in this. He ran a stormer behind Chacun Poursuit at the Dublin Racing Festival, a better race than I ever imagined he could have ran in that. He didn't stay in the Savills Chase, and also was beaten an awful long way from home, and Joseph's horses maybe didn't run as well as they could have done over Christmas. So it might be right just to not look at that form completely at face value, I believe anyway. I think it was much more like it in the Dublin Chase, and probably the step up to 2.5 is what he needs these days. My only issue with Fakir Duderies, and it's been a long-term issue I had with him as a novice chaser last year, and I had with him as a juvenile and novice hurdler, when he mixed between the two. He always seems to find 1-2 good in real proper Grade 1 races. I know he won the Drinmore Novices Chase, which was a Grade 1. I believe Samcro would have beaten him that day, though, and that would have been another 2. He then finished second in the Oracle, second in the race at Christmas, the Racing Post Novices Chase. He was second, obviously, at Nate's on reappearance behind Notebook, second to Chacun Poursuit. An awful lot of 2s in there, and I'm just not so sure. I thought he had every ample chance to go by, put the kettle on last year up the straight, even after the mistake at 2 out, and he just didn't really want to do it, and I'm not so sure whether he'd always find 1 or 2 too good, and that's my rationale behind not rowing in with the bandwagon, but there is an awful lot of money on him in recent days and weeks. Mellon, I can again see the angle behind. He's been to the Cheltenham Festival 4 times. He's second 4 times. Very unlucky last year in the Marsh when he probably just missed the last and probably cost him the race in the end. Again, another nearly horse though. As I say, that the seconds just tell themselves, and I don't think he's won an open Grade 1. And please feel free to correct me there. But the last race I remember him winning was a beginner's chase, beating Gallant John Joe at Leopardstown. And I love Gallant John Joe, but it's probably not Ryanair form as much as I'd love it to be. So he doesn't win enough for a horse that's as good as he is, and he's run some good races this year. He was third in the John Durkan, which was a good reappearance, third in the Savills, where he probably just didn't quite get home, and then I don't know what they were doing the last day. He doesn't like to be held up. He always hasn't liked to be held up, and yet they tried it, and it didn't work. Back to aggressive tactics over 2.5 will see him to best effect, but you'd have to be wary at this stage with Mellon that he's just always seemingly the bridesmaid and never quite the bride. And that leaves us with Samcro, which was one of my more controversial picks last year when I put him up around this time last year, on this video last year, I suspect, for the Marsh Novices Chase at 16 to 1. You can get Samcro at 20 to 1, non-runner, no bet, for the Ryanair Chase, and he's going to be my second selection for the race at an each-way price. Look, Samcro's a horse we love and we love to hate. He's just one of those. He's never turned into the horse that I think people thought he was. He was meant to be what Envoy Lane has turned out to be, but it hasn't worked out that way. But, that being said, if we're looking at cold, hard facts, and you can throw away his form in the winter, he doesn't seem to like very heavy ground. He has been to Cheltenham twice, and he's 2 from 2 at the track. He's won a Grade 1 Novices Hurdle and a Grade 1 Novices Chase. Like, there's not many horses that have won 2 from 2 at Cheltenham. Like, there's no getting away from that, and I know he's been, again, a little bit disappointing this year. I thought he ran a decent race, actually, at Down Royal on his reappearance when finishing third behind Battle Over Doyen, an easy game. He made a mistake at 3 out, probably cost him the race. And then was a no-show at Christmas in the Savills Chase. But as was Fakir Duderie, and people seem to be loving Fakir Duderie for this race, even though he pulled up as well in the exact same race. So I think that there's enough juice in the price. Fair enough if he was 8-9 to 1 or something, I wouldn't be going near him. But 20 to 1, it's very similar to last year. If you had turned up on the Thursday with a bit of better ground, Jack Kennedy back on board. As I say, he's 2 from 2 at the track, and there's no getting away from that. And there's a couple of horses in here that are nearly horses. And he's not, actually, when it comes to the big day. He often manages, but somehow, to get his head in front. I don't know how he won the Marsh last year, to be honest. He somehow managed to get home in front. But he'd be my option as an each-way perspective. Look, I've backed Allaho at 12 to 1 for the race. If I wouldn't put you off backing him at 5 to 1 personally, I think he's still a cracking chance. And Samcro, I'm adding into this race at 20 to 1 each way, non-runner, no bet. Moving on to the Stayers Hurdle, I'm conscious that I'm taking an awful lot of time out of your hands here, that we're already at 28 minutes and we're only on to the third race of 4. But the Stayers Hurdle is another very competitive race, and it seems to revolve around 2 English horses, being Paisley Park and Thyme Hill. Thyme Hill, another one of my better Ante-Post bets. There's been a few crap ones. Sam was out, obviously. I don't think he would have done anything. Delta Works out. I don't think he'd have done anything. And you've got the likes of Nasalam in there, who I suspect is well up against it in the Triumph. We'll come on to that in the Day 4 preview. Thyme Hill, one of my best, if not the best, on this channel, I believe, at 16 to 1 for the Stayers Hurdle back in September time. He's now best price 4 to 1. And as I say, he's second favourite into Paisley Park. I think, if I'm being brutally honest, I think it's between the two of them. The two of them have had a few fascinating clashes this year. They're 1-1 after 2 runs. Thyme Hill beat Paisley Park at Newbury, getting a bit of weight, and then Paisley Park managed to pull it out of the fire at Ascot in the Long Walk Hurdle when Thyme Hill maybe got there a hint too soon. I think the two of them have outstanding claims in this race. Obviously, I was a massive fan of Ronald Pump. He's been recently ruled out as a non-runner for this race. It looks like Fury Road isn't going to go either. So the race has changed complexion a little bit, even in the last couple of days. And I think, if anything, it kind of affirms to me how strong the two at the top of the market is. And whichever one you like. I think you can still get 10-3 Paisley Park and 4-1 Thyme Hill. They're not the worst prices you're ever going to find, I don't believe. So they're just something to bear in mind. We'll start off with Paisley Park, who is the favourite, and as I say, I do think he's got a massive chance in this race. I'm just going to take him on for one or two reasons. A, the price at 10-3, just in comparison to Thyme Hill, I think it should be. I think they should almost be each a 2 at 7-2, perhaps. If you're going to price them up the way they are, I think there's nothing in the form. The big worry with Paisley Park was the run in the Stayers Hurdle last year. And I know it was a fibrillating heart and all that, but they went a mad gallop last year and he just wasn't happy all the way round. And you never know with these horses, when is the heart issue kind of causing effect? Is it happening early in a race? Is it happening late in a race? Because he looked like he's always a little bit behind the bridle, but he looked out of sorts from a circuit out, really. And at the top of the hill, he was flat to the boards. I'm just not sure. You look at the race again this year with the likes of Flooring Porter in there. I think they're going to go a strong enough gallop again. And I'm concerned with Paisley Park in a very strongly run race that he's going to lack tactical speed. And I know in a Stayers Hurdle you do have to stay, and you have to stay very well. But if you find yourself far too far back, you're just not going to be able to pick it up no matter what horse you are. And I just think with Paisley Park, I'd be a little bit dubious about that he was caught out for speed last year because Apple's Jade went off too quick. He was almost caught out for speed in the long walk hurdle, and they didn't even go that quick that day. But he was done for tactical speed at a key moment in the race. I know he outstayed Thyme Hill perhaps that day, but I don't know. There's just a little bit at me that's just niggling at me with Paisley Park to not get involved with him. I also think, and this is a completely personal opinion obviously, I don't think him missing the Cleve Hurdle is ideal for this horse. He's struck me in the past as a horse that benefits from a lot of racing, and they've campaigned him heavily in years gone by, going through the Stayers Hurdle. So I don't think it's particularly been ideal for them to miss the Cleve and to go there fresh. Obviously, he's not going to rock up a tired horse or anything, but I think he does benefit from racing. I think he thrives off racing. And it'd be a little bit of a negative for me. And when you add just 2 or 3 little small negatives together, it'd be enough for me to take him on. As I say, I do think he's got a massive chance. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was bang there. Would it completely surprise me if he was to win? Probably not. But you're taking a shorter price about him than Thyme Hill, and there's more to like about Thyme Hill, I believe. And my reasons have been pretty straightforward throughout the entirety of the year. I think he's a lovely horse. I think the Albert Bartlett form from last year is absolutely superb. He finished 4th that day, beaten 2 lengths, and arguably unlucky not to finish closer. He had a luckless trip up the straight. He was hampered badly twice, once by Monkfish, once by Fury Road, and neither of them were looked at in the steward's room, which defies me, especially considering Monkfish also interfered with latest exhibition. But that's a story for another day. I thought, though, Thyme Hill ran a cracker that day. He had a very good novice hurdle form from last year up into the Albert Bartlett. And this year he went to Newbury and did it very impressively. An odd race that day, very slowly run, a bit of a falsely run race at that. And he quickened up very nicely. At Ascot, I think his performance can be slightly upgraded. I thought he was a shade keen early doors, and I'm hoping he'll be able to learn from that and maybe settle a bit better in a Stayers Hurdle, especially with a bit of a stronger gallop. And then, as I say, I think if Richard Johnson had his time again, he wouldn't just maybe get to the front quite as soon as he did. I know he only took it up at the last, but he gave Paisley Park a target. And the key to get Paisley Park beaten, I believe, is to not give him a target to run at. And if you're almost upsides him, I think he's got him for speed, Thyme Hill. I think he's got more gears than Paisley Park. I think if the race is over 2.6, 2.7, I think Thyme Hill would be not a certainty, but I think he'd certainly win. 3 miles at Cheltenham, of course, there maybe is that hint of a stamina concern, but Richard Johnson now has had 2 Grade 1s kind of be snatched from the Albert Bartlett last year and the Grade 1 in the long walk hurdle. I'm sure he'll be absolutely desperate and absolutely mustard to get the ride right this time round and to reap his revenge in the Stayers Hurdle. And I think it could be a good burn-up between the two, but I'm really hoping for Thyme. He's been a horse I've liked all year for the race, and I'm not going to be deserting him now. Looking through the rest of the runners, no better way to start than the Irish Challenge, which looked a little bit more thin on the ground than it did maybe a week ago. Tsar de Burley leads the Irish Challenge, the dual winner of the Per Temp Hurdle. He won it off top weight last year under a cracking ride from Barry Geraghty. He's a horse I just don't like. And yeah, fair enough, he might run well, he might win, but he's just not a horse I like. I think he's very lethargic in his races. Again, another horse, it wouldn't surprise me, in a top-class Grade 1 Novices Hurdle, he might be done for speed at a certain point in time. You only have to look at the first year he won the Per Temp, he was off the bridle all the way. Barry Geraghty gave him an absolute snorter. He travelled into the race a little bit better last year, and as I say, he did it quite nicely, but and him and the Storyteller were well clear, and the Storyteller has obviously backed up the form. But that being said, I just think in a proper Grade 1 Stayers Hurdle, he might just lack for pace at certain periods of time. He seems to be a bit of a ignorant, lethargic sort of horse that needs plenty of bustling, and I know Mark Walsh actually gets on pretty well with him. He did win that race at Navan earlier in the season, the 2 mile 4 Liz Mullen hurdle, staying on well to beat French Dynamite, Ronald Pump departing at the last. But that being said, he was poor enough at Leopardstown at Christmas time. He should have won that race on the bare form and didn't, and I just don't know. I think he'd need a bit of better ground, and I think he'd need an absolute perler from Mark Walsh to get him home. Flooring Porter won that race at Christmas time. Flooring Porter is also a horse I can't have at all in this race. I thought he got a freebie that day. Johnny Moore gave him a super ride. It was his first Grade 1 winner, I believe. He gave him a super ride, and he nicked 5 lengths out of the gate and won the race by 5 lengths. The Storyteller was second. Storyteller is a gallant horse that I suspect will run in this race and wouldn't be without his chance of picking up pieces for a place, but Flooring Porter, I think he's just going to set it up for some of these closes. I think he's up against a completely different calibre of horse in Paisley Park and Thyme Hill, and I believe he might be up against it. It is remiss of me not to mention last year's winner, Lisnagar Oscar, and I see an awful lot of previews of this race failing to mention Lisnagar Oscar, which I feel is wrong. Considering he did obviously win the race, and he won the race pretty impressively and was pretty good in the Rendlesham Hurdle on the weekend to finish second. That was a return to form. Look, it is hard getting away from the fact that the Stayers Hurdle last year was a complete bolt in the blue when you look kind of at his form in terms of a marked improvement. That being said, he's run well at Cheltenham before. He just seemed to come alive over this course and distance. He ran a decent race on the Bartlett the year before. He finished, I think, third in a Cleve Hurdle, and he obviously won the Stayers Hurdle last year. So if any course and distance is going to get it out of him, it will be this one. He's 20-1. You could argue that's maybe a point or two too big. I think he should be a shorter price than Flooring Porter, personally. But that being said, he's not going to be one for me. And at the moment, I was going to plan to put Ronald Pump up in this race each way, because he is a horse I do like an awful lot, but I'm going to stick with Thyme Hill at the moment. I have backed him at 16-1. I think 4-1 still a little bit like Allaho. I think 4-1 still a decent price, a fair price about him, and I'm hoping he can do the business for Richard Johnson and Philip Hobbs. Moving on to the last race of today's video, it's the Mares Novices Hurdle. Looks like another bloodbath of a race. 7-1 the field this for a Grade 2 Novices Hurdle, which seems bizarre only 3 weeks from the race. Very hard to know even who's going to run in the race. I'm putting up 2 in this, both in the non-runner no bet market, as the majority of these bets at this time of the year are. I'd be certainly, if you're not getting non-runner no bet, I don't know why you're kind of almost backing at this time, to be honest. That being said, we'll start off with the favourite in this, Hookup, who's currently 7-1, and not a mare that I'll be taking to the well. I think she's 7-1 just off the fact that Willie Mullins has such a good record in this race, and obviously you can't get away from that record in the race, but she was well put in her place by Royal Kahala at Fairyhouse 2 starts back, and I know she ran a very good race to come fourth in the Appreciated race at the Dublin Racing Festival, but she looks a bit of a complicated ride, I think. She's quite free. She's not the greatest jumper. And I know she was a very inexperienced filly last year when running in the Triumph Hurdle, but she ran an absolute stinker. Like a real stinker. Didn't jump at all, didn't travel far too keen, and didn't get close to coming home. Finished, I think, 10th or 11th that day, was well beat. I know she's transformed this year. She won a maiden hurdle beating Gars de So, but she's been, as I say, she's been beaten by Royal Kahala fair and square at Fairyhouse, and then was fourth in that race at the Dublin Racing Festival, where probably she was always going to be ridden to pick up pieces, and she did. She picked up pieces, so that would be just the concern I'd have with her. I think she's plenty short enough, and I do believe she's probably the price she is because of the Mullins factor, more so than maybe the form angle. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit hypercritical on her there, but I couldn't be having her personally. The joint favourite is Royal Cahill at 7-1 for Peter Fahey, and she'll be one of my two selections for this race. I think she boasts very strong each way claims. If she rocks up in this race, 7-1 is a short enough price each way to be taken 3 months before the festival, but I think she does have a very good chance in this. She seems to love Fairyhouse. She came second in a bumper last year when beaten by Castroveteri. She then went on and got beaten in a bumper on her first start this year and went far too keen. But she's since won a bumper maiden hurdle and then a listed novices hurdle, conditions novice hurdle, beating Hookup and Delvino that day. All at Fairyhouse, so she does seem to love the place. She then went back and ran in the Solarina novices hurdle last time out, and it was a little bit disappointing, I'm not going to lie. She didn't seem to travel with her usual fluency. Her jumping left maybe a hint to be desired. She wasn't very quick away from her hurdles. But that being said, she was still a very honest second to Rosie's Hollow, and she's going to get a £9 swing in the weights from that Fairyhouse race if the two were to oppose each other again at Cheltenham. So that's enough to bear in mind, considering she was only beaten 2 or 3 lengths. I know the bubble was ever so slightly burst with her not winning at Fairyhouse the last day, but I think if she rocks up in this race, I think she's got a massive chance. I just hope Peter Fahey goes and runs her. He's been a little bit coy about running her, so hence me backing her in the non-runner no bet market. But I think if she does rock up in this, she's a strong enough traveller usually. She's usually a decent enough jumper as well, and I think the stiff 2 miles should see her to good effect. Also in that race was the winner Rosie's Hollow for Jonathan Sweeney, who, when finishing third to Delvino in a mare's maiden hurdle at Naas, looked to be given a fairly easy time, but has won a maiden hurdle, beating Global Equity and Sean Ausicht since, and then won the Solarina. I'm not so sure whether she'll end up turning up in this race. She'd have to carry a graded listed race penalty in this, or I think the Solarina is a grade 3. I think it is a graded penalty in this. And I'm not so sure Jonathan Sweeney will be just overly mad keen in sending her here, personally. It wouldn't surprise me at all if she was to stick to Fairyhouse and run in the 2 mile 4 grade 1 mare's novices hurdle. And I suppose that is an option for Royal Kahala as well. But Rosie's Hollow, look, she'd have a chance if she rocked up in this race. I think you're always going to get a slightly better price than maybe she should be, given the trainer of this mare. She's a lovely mare, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if she maybe was to bypass Cheltenham. A mare that won't be bypassing Cheltenham is Galois for Willie Mullins. I think she'll take her chance in this for Kenny Alexander, who loves these mares races and loves buying mares. She was third in the Rosie's Hollow and Royal Kahala race. Bubble slightly burst that day. I think the form of her Thurles runs beating Mighty Blue leaves a fair bit to be desired as well, and I'd be willingly taking on Galois even at 9-1. Just a couple others to mention. The likes of Sky Ace is in there. I know some people quite like Sky Ace for this race. I can't see it at all. I cannot believe how good this mare's turned out to be for Shark Cannon, given he picked her up for 600 quid. Like, even I could have afforded her at 600 quid. So I don't know what's happened there, but she's won a listed and grade 3 race, or I think it was a grade 3 and then a listed race. Her last 2 starts, she's been away for a couple of months now and will arrive to Cheltenham fresh. She'd probably want a bit of better ground to be seen to best effect. Best of luck to Connections, but she wouldn't be for me. And also in that race that she won was Finest Evermore, who disappointed massively, coming fourth despite being a short price that day. I think she would be up against in this. She certainly would need to sort out her jumping an awful lot, but I do think she'll run, and if she was to sort out her jumping, it wouldn't be without a small squeak. The second horse I'm putting up at is trained by Willie Mullins, and I suppose it is a little bit of a look at the Willie Mullins angle in this race, and he has won this race before. You know, Eglantine de Soy was his 4th or 5th string 2 years ago. Concertista was his 2nd or 3rd string last year, so he has won it with horses that haven't been the first string And this mare is currently best priced 33 to 1, non-runner, no bet. And I think, given the recent Racing Post stable tour, this is her only option. She hasn't been, as of today, she hasn't been entered in any handicap for the Cheltenham Festival. So if she's running at Cheltenham, it will be in this race. And it's a maiden, actually, a mare called Glens of Antrim, who I'm really looking forward to running in this race. I hope she runs and hope she runs well. Obviously at 33. She's ran 3 times over hurdles this year. She was 4th behind Blue Lord when looking in need of the experience at Punchestown. That was a race that contained Julie Stowaway and Humunderson, who are also fairly solid yardsticks. She then went on to Leopardstown at Christmas time when giving Statler, the current favourite for the Albert Bartlett, a rattle in a Leopardstown maiden hurdle over 2 mile 3. She was arguably a tad soft in the finish that day and didn't jump massively well, but she was well cleared of some smart enough horses like Mahler All-Star and Lifetime Ambition. I rate that as good form. And then she was second last time out at odds on at Naas, beaten by Mr. Incredible. Mr. Incredible had previously been beaten by Gallard de Menil, so that form looks strong enough. Again, over 2.5 miles, I thought she was soft in the finish. I thought she was travelling, and then just got outstayed in the end. I think a drop back to 2 mile 1 on a stiff track could see this horse to really good effect. And I think just by the fact that she's a maiden is why you're getting 33 to 1 about her. And I think it's just too big a price. I think she's got form tied in with some of the stronger novice hurdlers around. I think Mr. Incredible could well easily be a graded novice by the end of this season. He mightn't run at Cheltenham, but might run at the likes of Verrihouse and Punchestown and wouldn't be without his chance in those types of races. So if you're putting that into a perspective, I know she was maybe a hint disappointing given she's been beaten at odds on the last day, but I'd be prepared to look over that. And I just think the form with Statler, with Mr. Incredible, is borderline some of the best form in this race, considering she's running against proper geldings and properly decent geldings. I don't think it's the strongest mare's novices hurdle we've ever seen. Willie Mullins was quite upbeat about her in his recent stable tour on the Racing Post, saying that she is improving and he wants to see her back at this minimum trip and hopefully to run well. I don't think he's given up on her, and I'm certainly not going to give up on her. And 33 to 1 just seems an insult of a price to me for the Mare's Novices Hurdle on Glens of Antrim. So Royal Kahala and Glens of Antrim to cover me for the Mare's Novice. Anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, another long video, another in-depth video, and a few very competitive races to mull over there. Hopefully the Gold Cup Day preview will be out by the end of this week, maybe Friday is when I'm hoping to get it out. Hopefully this will be out Tuesday at around 5 o'clock, so hopefully you're seeing it at around then. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. We're near on 2,700 subscribers, which is absolutely unbelievable. If we could keep pushing and almost get up to 3,000 by Cheltenham, that would be absolutely incredible. I hope you're enjoying the videos, and of course let me know your thoughts for day 3 down below. The big races, the Ryanair, the Stayers Hurdle, would you be siding with what I've been siding with, or would you be willing to take me on? They're very competitive races, so you may well easily be taking me on. And do you think Glens of Antrim maybe is a shade of value at 33 to 1 for the Mare's Novices Hurdle? I certainly believe so. Anyway, until the next video, please stay safe, stay well, hopefully land a few bets in the interim, and I'll see you guys then. Cheers.